In the summer of 2014, my family adopted a 1-year-old rescue greyhound called Molly. A friendly but anxious dog who several months before had been found abandoned in a field, tied to a post with a piece of rope. Assumed to be a traveller's dog, Molly's condition showed she'd lived a life, up to that point, of abuse. Scarred, starved and scared. The rescue centre we found her from housed tens of abused greyhounds like Molly, with many having belonged to travellers, and most of them having been forced to take part in the brutal, so-called sport of dog racing. According to Hounds First, one of hundreds of sighthound rescue centres across the country, 25,000 dogs are registered every year to race, with 10,000 of these somehow vanishing, or most likely killed. I find these numbers staggering, knowing that Molly could have fallen victim to this fate also. But how can an industry that raised £1.3 billion in 2014 have such little regard for the animals making them that money? Whilst looking deeper online, I discovered swathes of articles with reports of abuse of the dogs, including starvation, beating, and blood transfusions. But what is all this for? The answer is human financial gain. It makes me wonder, what do people see as more worth? The £10 note in their pocket? Or the life of the domesticated animal that's told to run until it can't run anymore? Rescue centres like Celia Cross in Surrey, where we found Molly, do their best to save the dogs that are found, often sending them to caring homes and far from the racetrack.
Last month, officials from within the sport introduced a greyhound commitment regarding the responsible treatment of racing dogs. But is that enough to ensure the dog's safety? Some argue no.
And though the sport is on a steady decline due to growing public outcry against the industry and the mistreatment of the animals, tens of thousands of dogs remain victims. But why is it then that even though dog racing is looked at so sourly, what makes its concept so different from the more glamorous and ever-growing sport of horse racing, which plays a huge role in wider society? Why do we assume that the portrayal of jockeys in crowds means those animals aren't also being exploited? The Thoroughbred Breeders Association in 2018 said horse racing generates £3.5 billion a year in the UK and draws in 6 million visitors. This makes it the second most popular sport for the British public. But with all the celebrity and media that surrounds it, and given its similarities with dog racing, I wondered if it was as glamorous as it seems. In 2018, there was an all-time high fatality rate in 6 years. Meanwhile, across the sea, 24 horse races die a week in the United States. This vicious death toll shocked me and led me to discover that in the last 18 Grand Nationals, horses have died at 16 of those events, meaning that there was guaranteed bloodshed in 88% of those races. In any other popular sport, the death of an athlete is met with shock and anguish, but I struggle to see why horses should be any different. On the PETA website, the organisation quotes New York Daily News reporter Bill Finley in an article about the immorality of the racing industry, with the reporter saying in 1993, "The thoroughbred racehorse is a genetic mistake. It runs too fast, its frame is too large, and its legs are far too small. As long as mankind demands that it run at high speeds under stressful conditions, horses will die at racetracks." I can't see how this sport is painted as glamorous, and I'm surprised by how long ago this idea of thoroughbreds not being natural to racing was mentioned. Yet, the industry continues to grow. Each year, for approximately 1,000 ex-racers, a calm life retired to a stable is not what awaits. Instead, they're sent to abattoirs to be murdered for meat. Is death a fair ending for a champion? Or an athlete? In the words of British racing champion Ruby Walsh, when referring to the death of R. Connor at Cheltenham 2015, he said, "You can replace a horse." This cold viewpoint was subject to waves of anger across the country, with CEO of Peter, Ingrid E. Newkirk, criticising the Irishman for epitomising the sport's greedy motivations, arguing how misunderstood and mistreated the creatures truly are.
The knowledgeable crowd, this Cheltenham crowd, they know a good horse when they see one, and this guy at the age of 4, goodness only knows what he can go on to achieve.
So the question is, why do we believe we have the right to use these animals for these motives, be it entertainment, money, or just satisfaction? Should we really feel the entitlement that we can take these animals and have them perform for us? Do we deserve their obedience? Do we deserve their affection? Why does it take the most extreme of consequences to occur to finally show people how these animals really are suffering for our own greed? How can we be so blind to the broken bones, the suffering and the scars? How can a person like me, my family, and those who rescued Molly, see that frightened little animal penned into a cage and feel pain, yet others will look at the animal, see the money, and disregard the life behind the bars? It upsets me to think that not only are there dogs out there who won't receive the liberation that Molly received, but meanwhile, on the wilder scale, in the public eye, horses are openly forced to break their bodies for profit, whilst we choose pleasure over peace. It seems as though the mindset for so many is that if we're the ones who run the world, then they can run for us.